All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming in. Appreciate you being here for the unveiling of the marker on a gorgeous day. As I mentioned outside, this is actually the Society's quarterly membership meeting. So members and non-members alike, welcome. Members and non-members, you'll be welcome to find out. We're not going to go through the business of the day and the reports and the departments and all that. Instead, our entire meeting is going to be about Mr. Jimmy King. And so we're going to turn it all over to him. He's going to speak to us and maybe have the opportunity to ask him some questions as well. For folks like us in the society, Mr. King here is just a treat. To find somebody that actually knows the individual that we're honoring today, be his relative, plus have all the family's history and stories about Frank R. King, this is truly a treat. And so, in addition to putting a microphone in so that you can hear him clearly, we're also videoing this and recording him because this is just priceless history that we certainly want to share for the generations to come. So with that, let me formally introduce James King, and then we'll let him speak. James Jimmy King was born on April 2nd, 1933 in Leighton. He was the second son of Lawrence Henderson King and Lucille King, and the grandson of Frank R. King. He had one brother, Henderson King. Jimmy grew up in Leighton, but went off to high school at Battleground Academy in Franklin, Tennessee. After graduating from BGA, he attended Auburn University and then served in the U.S. Army. Thank you for your service, sir.
Yes.
While in Franklin, he met his future wife, Polly Morgan. They were married on June 25th, 1955. Polly was the Leighton librarian from 1978 to 2015 for 37 years. They have 3 children, Ann, Sally, and Allison, 5 grandchildren, Laura, Jesse, Morgan, James, and Rebecca, and 1 great-grandson, Braden. After his time in the Army, he returned to Leighton and began farming. He's an avid horseman, breeding, raising, riding, and training horses most of his life. He also started a horse fencing business. We were talking a little bit earlier when we first got here, telling me about his cowboy days. Because he was a horseman in the area, St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital contacted him to ask if he would sponsor a trail ride as a fundraiser for them. He said yes, and in 1996, he got a few friends together for a trail ride, and they raised a few $1,000s. The Northwest Alabama Saddle Up for St. Jude's Trail Ride has continued for 27 years and has grown to be the largest St. Jude trail ride in the United States. This year it raised $440,000 and has raised over $3 million total. Jimmy was always had a strong interest in the history of North Alabama. He's been the keeper and the storyteller of the personal archives, artifacts, and records of his grandfather, Frank R. King, some of which you can see in that museum next door today. He has a good knowledge of local people, places, and happenings of the past. He was instrumental in the renovation of the Leighton Museum, and its location changed to the Leighton Bank Independent, which again is right next door, and that's where the museum is. So again, I remind you, we're recording this. If you could silence your cell phones, that would help us tremendously with the recording of it. And Mr. King, I turn it over to you.
Okay,
thank you very much.
You. Well, I appreciate it. All these people here make me feel like I'm somebody. Well, Frank King, my granddaddy, he died in our house in 1939. I was 6 years old, and I remember him. Well, he was born in 1889, 1869, 2 years before the Civil War. And then when General Dodge came through here with a train load of soldiers going to Atlanta to help Sherman burn Atlanta, he had a cavalry with him from Missouri. They called themselves the Avenging Angels. Well, Frank King, his mother, and his daddy was off in the Alabama 11th Cavalry fighting, and Nathan Bedford Forrest burnt the railroad bridge, and that train backed up into Leighton, and his mother, Mary Smith, she had Frank King by his hand. He was 5 years old. Little daughter Ann was 7 years old. They walked out on the porch, and those Yankee soldiers started shooting at them. Shot her through the right shoulder, and she went around the house to see if the kids were hit. But little Ann had a bullet hole in her dress, but it didn't hit her. And they raised horses, and they run the mares and colts in the barn and burnt them. And they burnt Leighton. They burnt McGrady's. And something like 40 or 50 houses all in one night and 2 days. And plantations, they just burnt the whole country. And, well, that was his episode for the Civil War with Frank King. But his dad was Hartwood Jr. His mother was Mary Smith. John Smith was her father, and he's buried across the road from Kitty Smith's, where she lives out on County Line Road. And he came over here from Germany. He was hired by the British. He was a mercenary. They sent him over here to fight the Americans in the Revolution. He saw what was going on over here, so he quit the English and joined the Americans and fought for them. And the Daughters of the Revolution put a marker out there for him that he was a veteran of the Revolutionary War. And that was John Smith. His name, he had a strange name, John Pond Smith, P-O-N-D. I guess that was probably German in the beginning, but it ended up Pond, I don't know. But anyway, that's what it was. And Mary Smith, they said, I read about her that, back in the Civil War days, she was known as a well-known horseman and a judge of fine horses. So I guess she handed on down to us, And that's good. Well, anyway, Frank King, he gave this property for the school up here, the Cobb County School. He built a house. It was turn to go up to the school. All my dad and it was 6 of them in the family. They were all raised there. And he was a cotton broker and had a store. He and his brother Paul King had a store. Frank King shipped a lot of cotton to New Orleans on the river. And in 1929, when the Big Depression started, I have a hard time talking. When the Big Depression started, well, he had a lot of money in New Orleans, and he had money here in this bank. And he got on a train to go to New Orleans to try to get his money, and they wired him up here that the banks were closing, and when he got to New Orleans, those banks were closed, and he lost everything he had. He lost his home, store building, horses, and he had a little bit of a health problem. I think he had a light stroke or something. And he went to Tuscumbia and lived with Miss Henderson, which was a widow of one of his brothers. Well, he started putting together all these artifacts. People would give them to him, and of course he found some. Most of them gave them to him for him to keep them, and and he started the Historical Society, and that was what that was all about. But he wrote a lot of letters to a lot of prominent people like General Joe Weaver and a lot of people that were well-known people, you know. He'd write them letters and they would correspond. And he got a whole filing cabinet of letters. And I've got that filing cabinet over there in the bank in a safe room back there. Well, the Friends of the Library here, they started those letters. They started making copies and filing them, and made a book of how they were filed and all that. And it took them 10 years, but they didn't work but just on Mondays. So, but it took them a long time, and they're over there. They've got all these copies, and they are filed, and you can look up a lot of stuff all right around here, you know, in Cobbett and Lawrence and Franklin County. And he just did so many things for this country, and he ended up an old man over in Tuscumbia, and he got sick, and my daddy went over and got him and brought him back and brought him over to our house, and that's where he died. But my daddy was the youngest in the family, and anyway, when Granddaddy went broke, Daddy was in the 11th grade. And he and Mr. Benny Harris came down here from Wolf Springs, and he looked kind of rough anyway. I don't know what, but anyway, my daddy made fun of him. He whooped my daddy, and they become big friends. And they lived upstairs over in the Fenner Brothers store. They bunked up there, and they worked in the stores after school, and they were trying to graduate from high school. They had one old light up there, and Mr. Benny sat and read medicine under that light for 2 years. Took a pharmacy exam in the state of Alabama, passed it, and became a pharmacist, and Mr. Ed Fennell set him up in the drugstore over here. So then the Cotton Oil Mill in Decatur, they built the Farmers Home Gin Company on the back street down here. My daddy got a job with it, and then in later years, they let him, they financed him to buy the gin. So that's where he got his start. But he and Mr. Benny was big buddies, and that's just all part of Leighton. And I tell y'all one thing I thought was kind of good. My mother, she was of old, what am I talking about? Anyway, yeah. Well,
School teacher.
huh?
School teacher.
Yeah, she was a school teacher. I don't know, I lost my line of thought. You know, you do that when you're 90 years old. but I'll get it back. But well, my mother, she taught school up there over here in Leighton. But anyway, she had a large family, and they were descendants of the Scotch. They ended up on Sand Mountain. Our family came during the potato famine when they opened all the prisons. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of that wasn't the family. She is pretty tough. But anyway, she had a brother, J.D. Briscoe, which she was really ashamed of. He's a big old tall thing, about 6'3". And all we ever did was trade mules and horses and drank whiskey. He'd get him 10 or 12 mules and horses and get them traded off, stay drunk about a week, and get him 10 or 12 more, trade them off. And my dad had a mule barn, and when he come through here, Dad let him trade out of that barn. But Mother didn't want me to go down and hang around Uncle Jay. But I slipped off and hung around him. I didn't learn how to drink whiskey, but I learned something about trading. And old man came in there one Saturday evening, Uncle Jay about half drunk. He said, J.D., he said, yeah. Said, that mule you sold me? Said, yeah. Said, she died. Uncle Jay took his head off, slapped his leg, well, I'll be dadgum. First time that old thing ever done that, he said. Yeah. But he is a character. Well, I don't know what else to talk about. I gave you the history of Frank King. I'll tell you one thing about him you didn't know, though. F.R. King. He went as F.R. King or Frank King. But his real name was Francis Rebecca. Yeah. He had a sister died as an infant, and they had named her Francis Rebecca. So he was born next, and they just gave it to him. So he went as F.R. King, Frank King, and Daddy said if you called him Francis Rebecca, he gonna hop off and hit you. Yeah. But I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Jimmy, tell us something about that bicycle.
Oh my goodness. Why did you bring that up? I used to stay in a lot of trouble when I was growing up. Not nothing bad, but just aggravated people, you know. Like the principal of the high school whipped me, and I went home, got my BB gun, shooting windows out of the school. Principal whipped me, my daddy whipped me, and he had to put some windows in. Well, he left a model up there at the house, and I slipped it off. I was in the 8th grade then. And I went to the football field doing donuts during the rain. And the coach whipped me, and my daddy whipped me. And I replant the football field. And then Mr. Sam Smith, he lived here in town, and every time he'd cross his yard, he'd run at you with a stick. So I got a big grocery bag full of soot out of the furnace, and we had these big old firecrackers about this long, had a fuse in the middle. And I put it in there in a sack, and I went down there and put it between his screen door and his regular door, you know. And he always wore a white shirt. Just before he got to the door, I lit that firecracker, and he turned black immediately. You couldn't see nothing but the white of his eyes. But now I'm going to tell you the rest of the story. Henderson, my brother, and Ben Fennell put me up to it. They hid across the road in the bushes over there. But I got the blame, and I got the whipping, and they said they didn't have nothing to do with it. Yeah. Well, a lot went on in Leighton in those days. You know, there's a brick of older boys that I wasn't part of that. They were 3 or 4 years older than me, but they put a mule in the principal's office up there at the high school. Shut him up. And they said it was a terrible mess the next morning. But I don't know. Well, I've told y'all I know about Frank King, so
But may I ask you, you were only 6 years old when he passed, correct?
yeah.
Do you have any memories, even
Not,
though you were such a young boy, of Mr. King?
well, I remember him, and I remember dying in our house, and when he first came over there, he was kind of sick, and he gave me a gold ring, a little gold ring. And I was wearing it, he put it on my finger, and then I lost it. I took it off somewhere. So, you know, but I remember that, and Daddy helped me up to see him in the casket, you know. We had a wake that night, you know, where we did it then, and people went and digged the grave, and we stayed up all night. And I did that, I stayed up with the wake. So my mother, he lived over there with us a good bit, 2 or 3 or 4 years before he died. And Mother said he would talk your ear off. So as many papers and letters he wrote and all the stuff he put together, I'm sure he did. But he put a lot of good, there's a lot of artifacts over there in this museum that you need to go look at. He brought them over here. They brought him over here from Tuscumbia after he died, and put him in the. And the old library was up above the drugstore on this side, on the south side. They put it up there, and I'd go up there as a kid and look through it all, you know, and everything, and then they moved it to the room back of the library here. I'd go back there. Well, didn't many people even know where it was and didn't know about it. But I got to talk to the Maldens and Bowling boy, what's his name? John Bowling. And we got interested in it, you know. So the Maldens took out 3 offices over there in the bank, and they got a museum people, professional people out of Montgomery, to come build the cases and display all of it. And Debbie Bradford, she worked hard with it. I think she cleaned about everything in there. But it's a rather large museum. And I tell you something recently, I want to tell this. I had a group of black 12, 13-year-old girls wanted me to take them to the museum. And I spent over an hour with them. That was the nicest group of kids I have ever been around. They were real interested. They'd ask you everything in there. They never talked out of turn. And anyway, they'd say, well, what is this? And how did they use it, you know? And I really enjoyed them. And they got their mothers, went out and got their mothers and brought them in there, and they was hanging all over me, taking pictures, you know. And I thought that was really good, that they were interested. Then I had one group of kids that was about half white, about half black. They were about the worst bunch of kids I ever been around. Started them in the museum, and they didn't get any further than that wall, and I got them out of there. Because they was wrestling and carrying on, you know. And I got in my seat and went out there and told them, in the lobby, and told them all to sit down in front of me. The first time I ever preached a sermon. But I went to preaching. And I told them, first thing I told them, if y'all don't straighten up and learn something and try to be worth something, every one of you going to hell. They started listening. Yeah, they did. Well, I talked and I went on, and then when they had them, they brought them in a school bus, and the two teachers, one of the teachers came back there after they got them on the bus, come back in after me, tears in her eye, and I thought, oh Lord, I've done something. She said, Mr. King, I'm so glad you did that. They is needing it, and we can't do it at school. I said, well, that's good. But one of the kids that we had in that first bunch of girls, I got a picture of my phone. I was down there carrying a group from Athens, grown people through there, and she had a little group of her own going through in front of us, and I got her picture in my phone, and she said, Mr. Jimmy said this, you know. And they was a smart bunch of kids. They were really nice. Yeah, really good. Well, I don't know.
Does anybody else have a question for Mr. King?
What year did the King family first come to Leighton?
1826. Horrible King came here, and then there was about 15 wagon loads of people came here, and different families. They came from Wake County, North Carolina. And the reason they came, they raised hemp and tobacco up there in North Carolina. They depleted the land. It wouldn't even make a crop hardly. They knew nothing to fertilize it. So they heard about the cotton down here, and they sold out and came here. Several families came here to raise cotton, and that's what they did.
The Indians were still settled here then, though.
Yeah.
They were moved for about 10 more years.
Yeah.
So they worked alongside the...
Yeah, Horrible King, he was out there at Cotton Town. Now you see, they had to buy the property, this valley in here from Andrew Jackson, because he took it from the Indians, set up a land office over in Huntsville, and most all the deeds to these farms through this valley go back to Andrew Jackson, which I thought was terrible. But
How many families came at that time? And were they all Kings, or?
no, there was Pruitts and Fennels and Kings and Pooh, I don't know, let's see. Down at Spring Valley. Ricks. I don't know, I could sit down and think of some more, but I'd have to think about it.
How are you related to Percy King?
Well, his granddaddy, Mr. Bruce King, and my granddaddy, Frank King, we're talking about, were first cousins.
I knew his family had been here a long time.
Yeah. They descended from Robert King, a son of Hartwell, and we came from Richard King. It was a son of Hartwell. So we all kin. Everybody in Leighton's kin, because wasn't nobody here much, but the families that came, you know, and they all intermarried now. That's the reason we go around flipping our lip. Yeah. But, yeah. Harbaugh, his old daddy, Richard came with him. And I got Richard's baby shoe. I put it in the museum the date of 1752. And he was old, and they got here, and they went back to North Carolina to settle some business. And Harbaugh died on the trip. requested Hartwell to bring him back and bury him at his new home in Alabama. Well, Hartwell put him in a barrel of whiskey and hauled him back. And in there, in the museum and that stuff I put in there, there's a little metal box of these homemade rusty nails. A note says nails from the lid of the whiskey barrel that helped Richard King. And I read that was kind of prominent in those days. They didn't have much way to transport a body. And my old brother said, I wonder what they did with the whiskey. I sure hope they poured it out. I tell y'all the truth, I made that up. That's like this old boy out there walking down the creek bank this summer, one of those hot days, you know. And he'd shown enough country, he didn't know much about what's going on. And there's a group down there, he went down there where they were and said, what y'all doing? Said, we got the preacher down here and he's baptizing. Well, he just got in the line, you know, and the preacher got to him, he laid him out in the creek, said a prayer, and put him up under, said, brought him up and said, did you find the Lord? No, sir. Laid him out a little further and put him down. Brought him up. You find the Lord this time? No, sir. He led him on out there where it's pretty deep, put him under and helped him a bit, you know. Brought him up and said, did you find the Lord now? He said, no, sir. Are you sure he went down here? Yeah. Well, okay.
Anyone else with some questions, please?
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
Yeah.
How did Leighton get its name?
From Mr. Lee, Leigh. He's bailing out east of Leighton on the hill up there. There's a cemetery up there, and he's burned there, just 3 or 4 graves. But he was a Baptist preacher, came here from I don't know where. And maybe somebody in here knows where he came from, but I don't remember. But he built the Masonic Lodge. I don't think it's really, it's some part of it, some of the original building, but I don't think much of it is. But he did that, and he built a lot of land, built quite a bit of land around Leighton. And they named the town after him, Leighton. Huh?
How big was y'all's place here when it came?
Huh?
How much land did y'all have when your people came?
Well, I don't know what they had, but, you know, you don't ask people how much land they have. That's like asking them how much money they got in the bank. Yeah.
A lot of them went to Texas in the war.
Now, Briscoes did that, not the Kings.
How many people here today are King descendants?
Stand up.
Quite a few in it. If you're around Leighton, you can't get away from your cousins. They're all here. They're all here. Yeah. But that's all right, too. We got a lot of good people. Did y'all know, you know, the Eliza Coffee Hospital? Eliza Coffee was a Madding from out here off of 6th Street Road, the old Madding plantation. And she married General Coffee. And that's the Eliza Coffee Museum. Small world, ain't it? So, yeah. They say the Maddings, they had 3 sons. All 3 were killed in the Civil War. two of them are buried in old Madden Cemetery. It's about nearly a mile off the 6th Street Road back there. They had a big plantation and a nice big wrought iron fence around it. And a man from the Sons of the Confederacy came and wanted me to take him to show him the Madden Cemetery. Well, I knew exactly where it was because Jimmy Fennell owned that property years ago and had it in pasture. And I went out there to catch some wild cows. And I come through there right behind the cow on my horse, and I like to run right smack into the cemetery. So I knew exactly where it was. Yeah.
What was the effect of TVA? Were people for TVA or?
Yeah, they were far.
Because some people were just.
Far for the dam, you know, yeah. Wilson Dam. And that's part of the museum over there. When they built the Wilson Dam, you know, in 1929, they let Frank King being a historian. Before they flooded the river, there was big Indian mounds out there in the river. And those Indians lived on those mounds and eat that mussel. The mussel about like shrimp, and that's how they got to be named Mussel Shoals. The river was full of those mussels. And anyway, he went out there. They let him go out there and dig into some of those Indian mounds. They lived on those mounds. And the mounds just got bigger and bigger because of family after family. But he got dug a lot of stuff. We got a Native American section over in the museum, and most all of it is what he found out there in those mounds, Indian mounds. So it's real interesting. And they were, all these people have been proud of TVA because they got electricity, which they never would have had. All kind of things, you know. And talking about electricity, my mother taught school. She and Roebuck came out with a refrigerator. And nobody had a refrigerator. We had an ice box. She couldn't wait till Saturday to go over to and Roebuck and get a refrigerator. And we had a black woman cook for us, called her Ida. Is any black women in here? No, but we called her Black Ida. But anyway, we loved her. And anyway, she told Ida, my daddy got her a plug-in put over there next to the wall. We just had a light come off a cord in the middle of each room. But she told Ida, said, now when they bring that refrigerator, have them to plug it in over at the wall. When she came home from school, Ida said that's the best thing you ever bought. And she had one end of the ironing board on the shelf in the refrigerator and the other on the back of the chair. And she been ironing all evening. Said she kept cool all evening. And that old refrigerator just about to melt down. I was just ready to quit. And the same thing when she took off Sid Roebuck, they came out with a garden hose. And Mama had gotten dead when they put in a pump in the well to put a faucet out there. The porch had a concrete porch screened in. We'd sleep out there in the summer, and she could wash it off, see. So she couldn't wait to get over there to get a garden hose. She's trying to go to school that next morning and told Ida, said, take this hose and go out there and wash the porch off. Well, she had never seen a hose, and she didn't know what to do. When Mama come home, she had one end of it stuck in the bucket of water and holding the other end and said, you might well carry it back because it won't work. Well, I could go on with details, but I guess y'all getting tired of them by now.
Tell them again about the bicycle.
Oh, yeah, the
You
bicycle.
ain't gonna tell us about that bicycle.
And the chicken.
Yeah.
You
Huh?
borrowed a chicken from somewhere.
Well, that's Miss Mattie Pruitt. Rick Pruitt's grandmama. She had a big old chicken yard in the town and up toward the school. And she had some old Rhode Island Reds. That's all Rhode Island Red. One of those old roosters looked like he'd stand waist high, you know. And I had a basket on my bicycle. And for some reason, I run in there and caught that rooster and tied him in my basket on the bicycle. And I went through Leighton with that big rooster flopping just like a big eagle, you know. I thought it was fun, but Miss Pruitt and Mama, they was waiting on me. They tore me up. I had to go put the rooster back in the chicken yard. That's what you talking about. And they put that in a program up there with grain, didn't they?
And I did a sketch of you doing it. With the rooster.
Yeah. And that's something.
Tell about hauling that ox for your daddy. Did you go pick up an ox one time for your daddy?
Yeah. He had a big old ox, big old spotted ox, and had big horns and had brass knobs on his horns, and I mean big. They plowed strawberries with him all summer. Uncle Henry Baby, back man worked for Daddy, they had a big sweep, and he'd plow those strawberries with those on big ox because he'd walk slow and that just lay the vines back, not tear them up, see. Well, he always we had 2 barns up here, and he'd bring the work stock in, winter them up to those barns. And I just got my driving license, and he said, take the pickup truck, go out there and get that ox. Well, he said, that ox weighed 1,400, I guess. And he said, you be real careful now. I don't think he can turn around that pickup. But if he did, he might turn you over. So that kind of scared me. But we got on up there at the barn, and I couldn't make him back out the truck, and he couldn't turn around. But I'd seen Uncle Henry holler at him, hit him with a stick, make him do anything. So I run me 2 reins, one down each side, got me a stick and hollered at him, and hit him with that stick, and he walked over the cab. He didn't jump. He just walked over the cab, mashed the cab down on the steering wheel, and folded the hood around the motor. And it was a nice pickup. So I went to the house and called Daddy. He's down in his office. I said, the ox dent up the truck. He said, well, drive it on down there and I'll see how bad it is. I said, I can't drive it down there. What do you mean you can't drive it down here? I said, he mashed the hood down on the steering wheel. My daddy said, the hell you say? So here he come, Mr. James Hatton, he worked for Daddy, he was a mechanic. They came up there, and the old ox just stood out there. He wouldn't go anywhere. My daddy had his hands behind him. He walked, I bet, 10 trips around that pickup truck, grunting. He said, now tell me again, boy, what you did. So I went through it again, you know. He said, well, I'll tell you the truth. I'd have probably did the same thing, because I didn't know nothing about that ox either. So I didn't get away. Oh, me.
What prompted the St. Jude ride? Was that already going on elsewhere, or how did y'all come up with that?
Well, they called me from, well, I tell you just how it was. We were making some money out of fencing about that time. And I was talking to the good Lord one night, and I said, making a little money, if I can do something worthwhile, don't ever ask him, 'cause he'll get you busy. So I got a call from St. Jude Children's Hospital. Heard of it, didn't know anything about it. And wanted to know if I'd put on a trail ride for St. Jude. It hit me in the head, right, hit me with a hammer. I said, yeah. So I called all my old buddies, and we went to Bankhead Forest and took in 9,000. Jimmy Gardner was on the ride. He just got out of dental school. And so he said that our old family farm's the very place to host this. I said, okay. So we all went down there, and we had to cut trees and bushes and pick up wire and tin. We cleaned up that whole place. By the time we got it cleaned up, I bet you was 50 volunteers down there cleaning that thing up, 'cause they know what it was for, you know. So there's at least 100 volunteers come in there every year. And now we have sent right at $4 million down there, but it's been 27 years. But that's still a good bit of money. So yeah. Well, Jimmy now, he done real well in his dental business. And he has put a lot of it back into that place. And it looks like a show place. But now the rest of us, we still put work in it, but we ain't got what he had to put in it, you know. But it's done good. And Aunt, she works with it year round. My daughter, she promotes and takes care of all the people with booths and all, you know, sell stuff. And she's good at that. And she's good at fussing at me. This is Jessie, my granddaughter. And she ropes with Beverly Robbins, and they're the world champion woman ropers. Won it 2 years. I won it this year. And then Raymond Neal there. Now I'm gonna tell you what he did, and you can pass your own judgment about what he is. But he rode, you've seen the PBR, the bull riding? He rode bulls professionally 26 years. Wow. And he broke up all over. Now you know, bull riders are not the smartest people in the world. But they'd have to be the toughest people in the world. He's a good one, though. Yeah, we all crazy about old Raymond Neal. I got an old book out there, and on the cover of the book said, "Here an old bull standing on his head said, Raymond Neal was the real deal." He's filling out a resume out there in Ann Food at the office, and previous occupation, he had a damn bull rider. Ain't that something? Oh, Lordy.
Anyone else? Well, then, we should probably give Mr. King a chance to take a sip of water.
appreciate it.
We want to thank you so much for doing this and appreciate
Thank
it.
you all. And thank the historical, so about the monument, the marker for the museum, historical marker. It's really nice. It's nice. And we're proud to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So that concludes the formal.